You have before you a copy of the modified written agenda, and I have one proposed change for revisions that I would ask from the board, and that is to strike the public appearance by Richard Hilton. I invited Mr. Hilton to attend the Budget and Audit Committee meeting, which will be taking up the issue of hospital ambulance funding, and he will attend that meeting prior to addressing the full board.
Mr. Mayor, might be recognized?
You may.
Mr. Mayor, in so much as that matters on the agenda, and you just announced to the board and to the public that Mr. Hilton is going to be attending for the Budget and Audit Committee meeting, and the Budget and Audit Committee meeting asked him, I guess, to be there, or, I'm a member of the committee. When did the agenda get set so quick? Are you chairman of the committee?
No.
Well, Ms. Brewer, come up to the table a minute. I don't expect for the agenda to get set outside official meeting. The mayor is not the chairman of the committee. He don't run the committee. The committee runs the committee. There are 3 members from this board that's on the committee. There's the vice mayor, Ms. Sistrunk, the gentleman from 3, and Alderman Perkins. Now, if there's going to be an agenda formulated for the committee, we need to know. And I don't need to be learning about it at this table. He's going to make a public announcement. I need to know just as much as he does. I'm an elected official, and I'm not fussing at you, Ms. Rule, but I'm tired of this kind of politics. Now, if something's going to be set for the Budget Committee, let the committee know about that. I should have known about that before I got here. I'm tired of these pet political projects trying to get passed during an election year. I'm sick and tired of all this stuff. We should have been governing the entire 4 years. Now, if Mr. Hilton wants to get on the agenda, we need to know about it. And you're the chairperson, as based on the vote of the 3 members of the Budget Committee. Now, we are the one who have the power to set the agenda. We are the one who determine what goes on the agenda. We're the ones who can make the vote. The mayor, to my knowledge, he didn't have a vote on the committee. We set the agenda. So from now on, if an announcement is made about somebody, I'm not fussing at you, Ms. Brewer, you're just the chairperson. That's the only reason I call you down, so don't take it personal. But from now on, if somebody wants to be on the Budget Committee, on the committee, I need to know about it before I get here. I walk in the door and I'm going to be told what the committee is going to do, and I'm a sitting member of the committee. I'm the senior member of this board. I don't know about to dictate what's going to be said. I'm a member of the committee. Now, hopefully, we can move forward and take care of the city business in a proper way. If we're going to be the governing body, we need to govern properly. Now, I don't want to hear nothing else in the street about no committee I'm sitting on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Brewer.
Alderman, let me respond to your comments. First of all, let me clarify, Ms. Spruill had nothing to do with the invitation extended to Mr. Hilton. I am the mayor of this city. I thought the Budget and Audit Committee could use a conversation with Mr. Hilton, and that would be a better format since that was the committee that formulated the original request that came to this board at our last meeting to have that discussion. I thought it would be more productive to have that discussion in that format prior to having the discussion with the full board. So I made that recommendation to Mr. Hilton, and he agreed to come. And I hope it will be a productive discussion. But Alderman Perkins, that decision was mine. Are there any revisions from the members of the board?
I would like to add an agenda item, please. Under board business, I would like to add consideration of authorization of staff drafting a resolution of support for the Citizens for Economic Development Act for approval by the board on February 5th.
Staff drafting support for
A resolution of support for the Citizens for Economic Development Act for approval by the board on for vote by the board on February 5th.
So the proposed revision is to add an item E under Roman numeral 10, which is to direct the staff to draft a resolution of support for the Citizens for Economic Development Act for a vote by the Board of Aldermen at the February 5th.
F. F instead of B.
Oh, excuse me, an item F. And I've got it on the wrong side of my agenda. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your proposed revision?
Pretty much.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection, any objection, any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been added to the agenda.
Mayor,
Yes.
under board business item B, I'd like to, if there's no objection, place on consent with move approval appointing Dallas Green to the City of Starkville Transportation Committee for the term ending March 1st, 2013, and extending the term to include the term ending March 1st of 2016.
Alderman Carver has proposed revising the agenda to place the appointment of Dallas Breen to the Transportation Committee for the vacancy from Ward 1 for the term ending on March 1st, 2013, and extending the appointment to include the next scheduled term ending March 1st, 2016 on the consent agenda. Alderman Carver, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Do we have further proposed revisions? Alderman Dumas.
Under planning and zoning, I've got a question for Ms. Spruill, and then, depending on the answer there, I'll move that to consent as well. There were 13 original consent, or 13 conditions. Number 7 and 8 were placed on the consent, are stricken. One of them talks about common space, the other about signage. Why were those stricken, specifically the common space? So if a homeowner's or an HOA is not, or the covenants do not cover common areas, the maintenance of common areas, then who will in fact?
The covenants do cover maintenance of common areas. That was what was included in the covenants that were amended. Is that not correct, Mr. Weimer?
My recollection was that one of the things they struck was the hold harmless agreement, because they did provide the hold harmless agreement by the time it got to P and Z.
All right, so
Those conditions were met. That was the.
okay, all right, so the covenants still have to be met, it's just the hold harmless language that's in there.
And two things weren't ready by the time the agenda went out, but by the time the P and Z met, those conditions had been met, so the commission struck those conditions.
Okay, all right. All right, so I would like to move item A under planning and zoning with the 11 P and Z approved conditions to consent.
All right, Alderman Dumas has made a motion to place item 11B2 on the consent agenda, and that is the approval of P&Z item number FP 12-07, a request by Mr. Jeremy Tabor for approval of Belgrove Phase 3, final condominium plat located at 500 River Road in an R3 zoning district in Ward 4, with the 11 conditions as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Committee. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none,
Under personnel, I'd like to place all 3 items on consent.
the proposed revision from Alderman Dumas is to place items 11H1 through 3 on the consent agenda. Those items are as follows: the approval of the authorization to hire Stephanie J. Ochoa, Brandon R. Hernandez, Pedro Yera, and Jace L. Dawsey to fill the vacant positions of police officers as presented. The authorization to hire Kenesha L. Hendricks to fill the regular part-time position in the general clerk's office in finance and the city clerk's office. Fill the position of general clerk in finance in the city clerk's office. Finally, the approval of the authorization to advertise to fill the vacant position of radio operator, records clerk in the police department. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear an objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Do we have any further proposed revisions?
Yes, I've got I just wanna, it's on consent, but I've had some questions about, item C under board business. This is just a call for a public hearing. This item was up before us. I brought it back in the summer. It's the item that included the, outside storage and included yard sales. Ms. Sproul sent the thing to me last week, and I've been too busy to really look at it much, with the fact that I did remove the yard sale verbiage, because that's one of the bigger issues that were debated at the time. And so I'd like to bring that forward for us at the next board meeting, for us to discuss the potential issues with outside storage, and I'll have that ahead of time. But there is a slight change, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. So
So there's no verbiage as to yard sales or?
correct, right?
It's just outside storage?
Just
anything?
outside storage.
Alderman Vaughn, did you have a proposed revision?
Yes, I did. To the mayor and the board, I want to know, would it be okay if I read appoint Alvin to the Transportation Committee without a letter from the one? Alvin has done great weight on this committee now, and he's very concerned about staying on it.
And I'll second that. Alvin has done a fantastic job on there.
And brings a special perspective
He
to
does.
that committee.
Okay. Do we have, is his position up?
Yes, sir. Third, be up 3-1.
It's soon to be up.
It's the one that,
All right, so the proposed revision from Alderman Vaughn is to make an addition to item 10B, which has already been placed on the consent agenda.
Right.
And that is to add Alvin Turner as the representative from Ward 7. Alderman Vaughn, is that your proposed revision?
That's it.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter will stay on consent as revised. Alderman Vaughn, do you have further proposed revisions?
No, that's all. That's it.
Do I hear any further proposed revisions from the members of the board?
Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Board members, I just wanted you to be knowledgeable of a particular matter before the matter goes through on consent. It has to do with public services, item J1, the contract for a software upgrade with CartGraph. That contract contains two provisions that, according to the Attorney General, violate public policy. One is the limitation of liability provision on page 10, and the other is the disclaimer of warranties provision on page 10. So I would advocate striking those two paragraphs before you vote to approve the contract. And I want to make sure that shows up on the minutes if the item remains on consent. And the reason we're doing it this way is the first time the contract was presented to me was in the board packet, so we haven't had a chance to negotiate with the vendor on the front end. And so if you want to go ahead and do business tonight, I would advocate striking those paragraphs, sending that back as a revised draft, approved by the board for them to either sign off on or reject.
Mr. Mayor, may we recognize?
You may.
Mr. Attorney, it is my legal opinion and that, certainly we don't need you looking at these matters at the last minute. If we, the governing body, in my opinion, needs you to be looking at these matters in well in advance so we can get the best legal opinion that we can. We appreciate your bringing that to us. My question, Mr. Attorney, is do you need further time to review this? We don't want you to have to analyze and study these matters in a very hurried manner, because we want to get the best legal advice and we want to be in the best legal posture for the city and the taxpayer. So do you recommend the board to pass tonight with your recommended changes, or do you need to study it further? So just give us some legal advice on to the board as what your opinions are.
Sure. I do think it's the best custom and practice to give me the contract in advance so we can negotiate with the vendor on the front end. However, this particular contract is not an onerous technical document. I have had time to read it today, and those are the only two problematic provisions. So it's totally the board's discretion tonight whether it wants to travel with those two paragraphs stricken or whether it wants to postpone the matter to give me time to negotiate with the vendor. Whatever's the board's pleasure.
Mr. Attorney, one last thing. Okay, just talk straight to me. Are you asking? Just let us know what you want to do. You're the lawyer. Are you asking us to? What do you want? What's best for the city legally? Do you want the city to postpone it for your review and negotiate with the vendor, or do you want us to approve it tonight with the paragraph stricken? Is that one of the two? What do you want the board to do?
The safest route would be to postpone it and give me time to review.
revisions.
Mr. Mayor, I move the matter be taken off the agenda per the city's attorney recommendation.
The proposed revision, which item was that?
J1.
The proposed revision from Alderman Perkins, do you want it stricken from the consent agenda or stricken altogether?
I move that the matter be removed from tonight's agenda based upon the city's attorney recommendation.
Proposed revision from Alderman Perkins is to strike item 11J1 from the agenda. That is a request for approval of a software upgrade with Cartograph Systems and approval of the annual maintenance fee. Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been stricken from the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I have not seen any revisions to the minutes, so I'd place those on consent unless otherwise.
There are revisions.
Okay.
So long as that's corrected by the city attorney on both sets, and Alderman Parker had a correction as well.
And you have those reduced to writing?
City clerk has
I've got them all.
Okay, all right.
Alderman Dumas has proposed revising the agenda to place items 4A and B. Those are the minutes for the December 4th meeting and the January 2nd meeting, respectively, on the consent agenda, and to be placed on the consent agenda as revised in writing by the city attorney and by Alderman Parker, and the clerk has copies of those writings. Alderman Dumas, is that your proposed revision? Yes. Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, those matters have been placed on the consent agenda. Are there any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Parker to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Parker, would you like to speak on the merits? Any discussion? Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. You now have before you the consent agenda. Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised is approved. And with both sets of minutes placed on the consent agenda, that will take us to announcements and comments by the mayor and members of the board tonight. I have no comments this evening. Are there any comments from the members of the board? Alderman Sistrunk.
Some of y'all may know Lynn Phillips Gaines, who's a financial advisor here in town, and you may know that Lynn Phillips Gaines was ordained to the diaconate in the Episcopal Church a year or so ago. Couple of years ago, I guess. And as part of that ordination, she had to select a project that she was going to use as her service project. And her area of service that she is working on is trying to find a way to I'd like to say eliminate poverty, but minimize poverty would be a better way to describe that. And she has implemented and is working to establish and grow a program called Starkville Bridges Out of Poverty. It is a complement to a class called Getting Ahead in a Just Getting By world. The Bridges Out of Poverty program is geared for middle-income people who would like to learn more about understanding poverty from the point of view of those people who live in poverty. The Getting Ahead in a Just Getting By world is designed for people who are lower income, who are trying to move into middle class, middle income status. And it's a 12-week program, very, very demanding program. There's been one class that's graduated, and two classes have graduated, and have taken those steps to move from lower income to middle income. But I'm announcing tonight and inviting particularly some of our department heads who deal directly with these people who might be engaged in those classes to attend the Bridges Out of Poverty Community Training Workshop on February 22nd. It's from 8:30 to 3:30 at the Sportsplex. And they have a speaker, Jody Farr, who's a national speaker in that area. Lynn assures me that it will be entertaining, that there will be food, that there will be breaks, and that that there are funds available to ensure that our department heads or their representative, or perhaps both, can attend at no cost to the city. So I'm inviting them specifically and inviting anybody else who might want to learn more about the program and how you can help address poverty here in the city of Starkville in a real tangible way to attend if at all interested. There will be some flyers in the mayor's office, and there will be some contact information attached if you're interested in that.
Any further comments from the members of the board? Do we have any further comments from the members of the board?
Mr. Mayor, let me just say, may I be recognized?
You may.
Let me just say briefly, of course, we appreciate all our guests here, but I see a lot of our employees that are not normally here from public services, and I guess, and I'm not for sure, but it's good to see them, but of course, if they want to say something to us, just want y'all to know y'all can speak to it at the 3-minute portion of the agenda, and we're glad to have y'all here, along with the rest of everybody else who's here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments? Any further comments? Seeing none, we will now move to citizen comments. At this time, any citizen wishing to make comments may do so by coming forward, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Oh, and please introduce yourself.
Good evening to the mayor and board. My name is Alderman, Town Ward 7. We want to recognize Vice Mayor Sid Trump and Alderman Vaughn.
Thank you, Alvin.
Mr. Turner.
All right, thank you again for nominating me for the Ward 7 representative. I'll do the best I can. Citizens. All right, it's praying time. We have issues everywhere. Citizens would like for you to look at that issue that I brought at the last meeting about Pine Trail Park. Even though we is in a big white community council van, sometimes we have to dodge the bullet. And with that in the road, ain't nowhere for you to go. But just take a look at it. No one needs to get bound up. All right, this time of year, that's not a good feeling. When I was my 3 years left in school, I had to go to a special class because chemical imbalance in the brain, and it had to learn to do my speeding up, reading, writing, counting, spelling. So, but I'm glad that it was, for people with problems. Also, we are hoping that not too much changing is done with the second Tuesday of every month concerning the school board. We thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Further citizen comments?
My name is Frank Rogers Jr. We in the Starkville Water Department, we got some concerns want to ask about the salaries of the employees. Recently, back here, the board of Alderman recently had a department of MSU compared the salary with other employees at those other cities and submitted for similar sizes. And the report was presented at the board on the 2nd of January 2013. And they had indicated that the employer's salary was lower than some position at other cities, and we just were concerned about what was going to be did about it.
And that matter at that meeting was referred to the Budget and Audit Committee meeting, and they will be bringing a plan for addressing salary issues back to the board as a whole.
And can I expand on that a little bit, Mr. Rogers? The Budget and Audit Committee meeting, the Budget and Audit Committee, rather, is going to meet with Jeff Markham, who's from the Stennis Institute, who prepared that report and get more detailed information that we have than he was able to present us at the board meeting. We're going to work on a transition plan, and I can't promise you that it will be a 1-year plan. It may be a 3-year plan, but we're going to work on a transition plan and try to sort through how we best move everybody to a point that's more in line with comparable communities. But we will work on that. Know that it's going to take us a little while. Jeff has indicated, Dr. Markham has indicated that there's a lot of data and there's several decisions that we're going to have to make. So if you don't hear anything from us in a month or so, don't think that we're not doing it. We are working on it, and it just is not something that we can change quickly. So. But we have every intention of bringing a plan back to the board.
Okay, and where they don't collect enough money for taxes, is tax collection a problem? I mean, that just like the general funds, anything like that. Well,
We honestly struggle with our budget each year because taxes in the city of Starkville are the lowest of the communities our size in the state. So that absolutely impacts it. If we had the same millage rate as other communities, these problems probably would have never gotten as severe as they are now, and would certainly be easier to address. So we have to balance all of that, and it's possible that as we're trying to develop this transition plan, we may call on some of the employees to help us work through the best way to do this. So if you don't mind, I may keep your name in mind.
Well, we're just wondering about, at one time we was getting cost of living raises, and we were getting, just getting raises. All of a sudden it just stopped.
I think we gave a raise
Not the current fiscal year,
not the current
but
budget
last
year, but last January, a year ago, a 3% raise.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Do we have any further citizen comments?
I come on behalf of the Campbell family, and it's a little bit unorthodox, but my daughter's nervous, so this is Shanice Campbell, Ward 7, and she wanted to speak about the misconduct by police officers, so I want to introduce her. Also, if I may, my husband, Ron Campbell, will speak directly following her, and myself, if I'm not stepping on anyone's toes.
And Ms. Campbell, you are more than welcome to use the citizen comment time, but that matter is scheduled for executive session discussion and tonight as well.
But I want you to have this taken no with me.
Yes, ma'am.
It's something that you want. Advertise. All right, go ahead, baby.
Well, I was leaving our house. We stay at 409 West Main Street, and I backed out of our driveway, and I took the cut in the road to go to my cousin's house. She stays on Garrett Road. When I got to the red light in front of Matt's Meat Market, there was a police officer behind me, and he had his lights on, and in the mirror, he asked me to pull over. And when I pulled over, he asked me for my license and my registration, and I asked him why was I being pulled over. He said that I was avoiding a roadblock that he was having at the top of the road where I stay. So I was explaining to him that I stay at 409 West Main Street, and he said, okay, but he took my license and he ran and came back and told me, well, he asked me, had I ever gotten a seatbelt ticket? And I told him yes. He asked me, did I know what happened to it? And I told him I paid for it. It was $52. And he said that in the records it was showing that I had a warrant after my arrest. But there was no paperwork, so he was going to have to see what they wanted him to do. So he took my license and he went back to his car, and I probably waited 30 to 45 minutes for him to come back and tell me that he would let me go, but during office hours I should call to contact them about the warrant. And that was all that.
So tell them how it makes you feel to sit there for 45 minutes in the public, and we don't do anything you say.
Well, when he let me go, he told me that he was gonna let me go because of the fact that I did stay at 409 West Main Street. So it did make me feel, kind of out of place when I had already stressed to him that that's where I stayed. And then about the whole warrant thing, I didn't understand how I could have a warrant with no paperwork, and then for me to have a warrant for him to let me go and advise me to call during office hours. It was kind of ridiculous to me.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell.
Good afternoon. My name is Ronald Campbell. I live in Ward 7. I'm Shanice's father and Sabrina's husband. And Sabrina brought this issue to you all last month. At the time, I was a little bit under weather and I wasn't able to get up here. But I was kind of concerned for the simple fact that I was simply going home, turned into my driveway, and the next 2-3 minutes, I got 3 police cars in my driveway. Asking me, can they see my driver's license and registration, which I asked why, and they kind of explained, whenever they ask, you're supposed to provide it. Now, I don't have a problem with that. But once he saw that I live at 409 West Main Street, as far as I'm concerned, the issue was over. Because if I go through that roadblock, the only thing he's going to ask is, can I see your driver's license, insurance card? Once I show it to him, I'm going on about my business. He's not going to run my license. So I don't feel like there was a reason for him to run my license. I had done absolutely nothing but turned in my driveway. The fact that within the next 2 to 3 minutes I got 3 police cars at my house, that's an issue for me. I kind of feel like they can do whatever they want to do, when they want to do it, where they want to do it. I've lived over there going on 6 years. And I can't tell you, and I don't want to say it's a racial type thing, but it's difficult for me to go through roadblock after roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. Personally, in my personal opinion, I kind of feel like not me, myself, but as a group of people, we're kind of being racially profiled. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying that's what's going on. But my issue is that you come to my place where I live, I show you that I live here, and then there's a big issue. They wouldn't let me go in the house. Once I showed my license and I live there, I'm trying to go into the house. Well, I can't go. They won't let me go. They want to still have a conversation with me. I don't feel like I should have to have a conversation. I did nothing wrong. I should be able to go in my house, close my door, do whatever it is that I want to do. And that wasn't allowed to take place. My wife, she shared a little bit more, she gave you all a little bit more information because, she did the majority of the talking. I was really kind of upset. And I kind of felt like they were kind of baiting me to say something to give them a reason to take me in. And I just kind of wanted you guys to know how I personally feel about that. I wasn't able to talk to you guys last time she came up, but I just want to kind of personally let you know that that's how I feel about the situation that took place. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Now, you asked me, I'll do better this time, Mayor Wiseman. You asked me why I didn't talk to Lenny. Let me explain to you why I didn't talk to Lenny. I received this certified mail. This letter to inform you of the findings of the written complaint submitted by you concerning misconduct and racial profiling. Now, I've been in business for years. One thing you never do is you never give the recipient a letter in which you capitalize, bold print, anything, because that tells the recipient you're yelling at them. That's unprofessional. And in here it states, after thoroughly reviewing all the different aspects, statements, and evidence presented, the officers involved, and they list the officers, MPO Josh Wilson, Officer Tyler Davis, and Officer Amber Hayden, were deemed to have acted appropriately and according to policy and procedures. This complaint has been deemed to be in capital bold letters, unfounded, and the officers in capital bold letters exonerated. Okay, first of all, the letter's unprofessional, and it comes from Lieutenant Henry Stewart, and sometimes people get in position because they'll do what you say do, for whatever reason. My thing is this, I want you all to take this into your office when you go in executive session. No one should be able to come into your property, we're not a police state, and do whatever they want to do, how they want to do it, because they wear a badge, because they're in uniform, because they're black, because they're white, because if 3 black officers came onto your property, disrespected you, demeaned you in front of your family, or for whatever reason, because they felt like it, those officers right now, if you're honest with yourself, if we're honest with each other, they would right now be either off duty, without a job, suspended. They will not be still in office, and they will not have received, you would not have received a letter like this. Okay? We all know that. That would not have happened. We have to get over this Jim Crow mentality, because everybody will not sit around and keep the Martin Luther King mentality. If we continue to allow this, Mayor Wiseman, you know what's going to happen? We're going to end up getting that Malcolm X and that Louis Farrakhan. And that's not my nature. Even the Bible says protect your own. We can't keep doing this on the dawn of Martin Luther King birthday. We have to do better. And with the new, and this is no threat to you, but with the new mayor election coming up, I want to see you do better than what we may possibly get in office. I know you better, and I have known him since I was a child. I want the best for Starkville. I don't want to settle for less. I want the best for Starkville. And we're going to have to come together as a community, as a family, because this is unacceptable. This is why I didn't go to Lindley, because Lindley doesn't care. I remember Lindley from when I was a child, and I didn't like the color he wore then, or the uniform. And I don't like it now. Please consider this.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Further citizen comment?
My name is Jay Yates. I'm a resident of Ward 1, Mayor and Board of Alderman. I know you're going to talk about the speed tables on Greensboro Street. I just wanted to kind of voice my opinion a little bit if I can. First of all, obviously, I have to consider the design of the speed table, speed bump, but the table I think is the way to go. For the speeds, obviously lower them down, safety and liability. I can bear witness that the cars will come through there at 60 miles an hour and at times, and a lot of times in the 40 to 50 mile an hour range. My neighbors have actually been out there with a radar gun and we clock them. I mean, it's for real. It's definitely happening. I've almost gotten run over riding my bike through there, and it's really, really dangerous. I think everybody knows it, and something needs to be done. I just wanted to say that I would like to add my voice to please consider doing something about it. In addition to that, emergency vehicles, when they come through there, because I think somehow maybe when we blocked off the Green Oaks, that this has now become a through street from 182 to Highway 12. So there's a lot of emergency vehicles coming through there, going where they're going, and I think that's the part of the issue is blocking one part of town has now put a lot of pressure through there. So that's something to consider. In addition to just regular traffic and emergency vehicles, school buses. And everybody knows the school buses leave from right here, and they're coming down that road, and they're speeding out a little bit, and I'm saying 50 miles an hour and over, and that's every single day and every morning at 6:30, 7 o'clock, for sure. I've talked to the majority of my neighbors up and down through there. There may be one or two that disagree. I think everybody wants something done about it. I think Greensboro Street Historic District obviously is iconic to Starkville and needs to be safe. And that's really about it. I hope y'all will consider and do what we can do to make it safe. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. Further citizen comment?
Mayor.
Yes.
I just wanted to, if I may, and I know we don't normally engage in conversations, but speed tables are one option. They're a fairly permanent option, as we were discussing earlier. Your thoughts about us asking the police department to step up patrols on Greensboro in terms of placing maybe the motorcycle policeman there?
It would be fantastic. I think they would write a lot of tickets. I think it would slow people down. And they're more than welcome to sit in my driveway, which is directly, probably in the middle of the 2 stop signs, which is the highest speed they're gonna get at, right in front of my house. So
Okay.
they're welcome to my driveway, and I think if that's the way we go, then whatever we do, let's try to do something about it, because it's dangerous.
Do we have any further citizen comments?
Mary Lee Beal, I didn't plan to speak tonight, but I have to concur with Mr. Yates. Greensboro, from the stop sign at Reed Road to the stop sign at Whitfield is an absolute racetrack. The school buses, cars, motorcycles, whatever, and they go run through there all the time. And I think if, I'm like Mr. Yates, you can use park in my driveway too. They have, sometimes they have put some speed signs up there close to Whitfield Street. I'm not sure one speed bump would be enough at the length of Greensboro Street.
That's one of my concerns, frankly.
So we might possibly try this. If you do a speed bump, then I think there needs to be at least two.
Several, I'm sure.
Several. But they do fly up and down the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bill. Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments this evening? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, our public appearance this evening has been canceled. We have no public hearings, so that will take us to mayor's business. And this is a matter that has received some discussion over the past 6 to 8 months. The downtown merchants, both as individuals and now collectively through their organization, the Main Street Association, have made requests to the city that the 2-hour parking limit in downtown Starkville be more effectively enforced. Right now, we have no dedicated staff to enforcing 2-hour parking that is legally in effect for downtown Starkville. And it's my opinion that given the people that have the most significant interest in parking downtown's request, we should provide them with one of two answers. We either should have a plan for enforcement of a law that we have in the future, or we should look at modifying the law. So what I've done is I've worked with the chief and I've worked with Mr. Boyd to figure out how we might staff a position that could effectively enforce 2-hour downtown parking. And this proposal is for a temporary part-time staff person who would be staffed in the police department to be paid at $12 an hour through the end of this fiscal year to enforce downtown parking. That gives us the ability to do this for a while and then see how it's working at the end of this fiscal year and determine how we'd like to go forward in the future. Discussion. Alderman Carver.
What were the hours discussed on this proposal?
There's no hours in the proposal. That would be an operational decision, and it would certainly be something that would need to be tested through the program. When it could be most effective would be the goal.
So would this be, I guess it's a question for both you and Chief Lindley, but would this be an in-house police officer on their time off, or would this be somebody we brought in, or would this, who are you looking at, somebody that's already a city employee, or?
Well, it would be an open application process. Chief, do you have any conception of what might be ideal to fill this role?
We would advertise, it would be a temporary part-time position on a trial basis. I anticipate we probably will hire a civilian to do it.
So I guess that leads back in the only heartburn I got, it would be having a civilian in a police empowerment position. Would they be in some kind of uniform to distinguish, or
Actually, the precedent on this is long-standing. We used to have meter maids, if you will. It's very similar to that, things we've done in the past along this line. It would not be doing anything what we've done in the past.
Okay, I think through that I'll support this, and also mainly due to the fact that it's time limited through the fiscal year, and I think at some point, if the board would agree, have some kind of, I want to make sure this doesn't get approved next fiscal year, and we have some kind of checks and balance approval process at the end of this year to see, let Chief come in and give a little report, or let us know somehow, see how it's working.
Can I tag?
Alderman Corey had raised his hand.
I'm sorry.
Alderman Corey?
Well, and going back to the discussion of the hours, since it's part-time, because it lists 20 hours, of course, it wouldn't be 8 to 5 every day. I'm assuming that it would be kind of randomly assigned throughout every week, different hours of the day. I'm guessing the hours would be between 8 and 6, since those are the hours of parking enforcement in downtown?
Several different ways to do it. Depends on how many days you want. You can't go over 19 hours in a week, or you have to pay 50% benefit. And you want to try and target the times that are the most frequent violations, usually which are in a window from about 10 to 2. So, we'll have to be flexible with it.
Okay.
All right, Alderman Vaughn, I'm gonna get Alderman Sistrunk, who was next, and then you'll be next. Alderman Sistrunk.
I wanted to ask, given the nature of our community as a college town, things slow down in the summer. Might it be appropriate to try this out through, say, the end of May, and then make a reevaluation? Because, as Alderman Carver's pointed out, sometimes things get into place and inertia takes over, and they just remain in place. Is parking a downtown problem in the summer to the extent that it is during the regular school year?
It's not as severe in some.
Okay.
Alderman Vaughn.
I wonder that we take on a consideration to encourage the store managers to encourage their employees to park in the city public areas where we got allotted there. That way you won't have to hire no one. If we just get the store manager to encourage their employees
That's right.
to hire in the public area that we already got for them. Get all the employees parked there, and that'll you won't have to hire no one. We scruffing for money, but every time I look around, we find a way to spend some money.
Alderman Demas.
I want to first say thank you for bringing this up. I know I've brought this up many times. I'd like to defer some of this, if I could, and ask Ms. Gregory to speak a little bit, because she's been at the beginning phases of all this to talk about the issue of why it's important, where it's come from, and why we need to look at it. So she can answer that question, because there's been several steps taken to encourage downtown businesses and the like.
Thank you. Alderman Vaughn, you're right that would make the most sense for the managers of the stores or the restaurants to require or encourage their employees to park elsewhere. We have actually, myself and others have actually gone door to door, not just to members of our association, but to all of the law professionals, the restaurants, the retail stores, and specifically requested that they please help us with this issue. And require their employees to park elsewhere. And we've done that at least 3 times with no success. So I too hoped that would resolve the issue, but it hasn't at all. So we really would certainly appreciate any help from the city.
And I think the biggest issue there is the temporal nature of the employees with the restaurants downtown. Every 3 or 4 months they get a new batch of employees, not a completely new batch, but their turnover is significantly high, and so unfortunately they don't have the control that it would be nice for them to have, to say you don't park here, you park here, and it's proven much more difficult than it obviously we would like it to be, to encourage folks to use our public lots. And I'll say too, and this is something we've talked to Edward about, and I hope will be part of a conversation down the line. We do have parking that is adjacent to downtown, and we have quite a bit of parking adjacent to downtown, but there are improvements that need to be made to those parking lots to make them more accessible. The one north of Starkville Cafe is accessible by way of the breezeway, but there needs to be improved striping. The lighting is not the best, so when you start talking about these issues associated with nighttime parking, those types of things, they become some of the challenges. The parking lot next to the community market site behind Sullivan's Office Supply, there are a lot of improvements that need to be made there, and we're having those conversations about how to do that. But when you look at the south with the heat, with the efficiency, with the culture of parking at the front door, it's not the easiest to change that.
Alderman Corey.
Unless anyone has anything else to say.
May I ask one more question?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I'm looking for the source and use, and I'm having trouble finding right here. The source of funds?
It would have to come from contingency.
Contingency. And we have how much in contingency, Mr. Adams?
30 at present.
30 that's uncommitted?
That's right. 50 originally budgeted, 20 for economic development is what's been encumbered so far, leaving 30.
And so this will leave us,
What about the 182 drainage?
That came from capital project.
so this will leave us with
19.
19 for the remainder of the year.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
May I add one more thing, Mayor?
You may.
We also, the Main Street Association, plans to continue investing in and increase our investment in directional signage to the public parking areas that we have. We've just spent about $17,000 on wayfinding signage, and it should be here in the next couple of weeks. Part of that signage does point people to public parking lots that Alderman Dumas referenced, and we plan to, if we can perhaps see some improvements to those lots, or as need arises, we plan on investing more money in specific signage at those specific lots. And other, lighting is something that we've talked about making investment in to make those lots a little safer and more appealing to shoppers. So we plan to do our part as much as we can to point people to those public lots.
And the signage is no small feat, I'm sorry. It's really a fantastic project. It's been ongoing now for 18 months, 2 years. And it will be setting a precedent in the state of Mississippi for directional wayfinding signage. The challenging part was actually finding someone who could meet the standards by which we were setting on this. And they look fantastic. And they're really high quality, they look good, and so I'm very excited about those signs getting in place so that they can, it's not only for downtown, but I mean, they're helping with historic districts and the university and others, and I think it will be a great thing to see those on the ground.
Alderman Sistrunk.
I have two questions. I hope I can remember them both. Would this person also be able to issue tickets related to people who are parked in the handicap accessible parking places inappropriately?
Yes.
Would they be able to, this is my personal pet peeve, everybody, I'm gonna go ahead and confess, would they also be able to write tickets to people who make U-turns to park downtown?
Yeah.
Okay. And then my other question was, how long will it take us to, if we approve this, how long will it take us to get somebody in that spot? Are we talking about a month, 2 months, a week?
It would.
Process. I would think it would take at least 2 weeks.
So would we need to authorize advertisement tonight?
Advertisement, and then you'd have as soon as applicants could be screened and interviewed, you'd have a proposal for a hire on the agenda. The earliest you could possibly turn that around, and I don't know if you could do this, it's February 5th. But if not, I would assume it'd be February 19th.
And the reason I'm asking is because if it drags into March, or even longer, we're hard up against the summer season when things do slow down downtown, and so
March, April is the busiest time of the spring, so that would be potentially a target date.
Okay.
So the proposal that y'all are proposing tonight is gonna be stopped and is gonna have a review process at the end of May?
I'd move it up. I'd move it up to the end of May. Certainly should give us a chance to see if this works or not.
So we won't come near to this 11,000?
I think it would be more in the $5,000 to $6,000 range.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Alderman Corey.
I would move the approval of the request to hire a temporary part-time parking enforcement officer to be assigned to the police department. Funding for this position to be appropriated from the contingency fund with an amount not to exceed $11,000, and authorize the city clerk to proceed with advertising for the position.
Alderman Corey has made a motion to approve of hiring a temporary part-time parking enforcement officer for downtown Main Street parking enforcement in an amount not to exceed $11,000. With that amount to come from the contingency fund, and to authorize the city clerk to advertise for the position. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
I'm happy to second it if I can make a friendly amendment to it, which is to put an end date at May 31st unless further authorized by the board.
All right, Alderman Corey's motion has been amended by him to fix the end date for the temporary employment to be May 31st, 2013. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
Yes.
Now do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistra. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
All right, Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Ms. Spruill, I just want to make sure that I understand this correctly. I know the Chief of Police has been before the board and spent a lot of time making a very thorough presentation, and it's my recollection during the presentation that that one of the major problems with the downtown parking is that there are employees of the businesses that are consuming those parking spaces. Is my recollection stand correctly on that? And in light of that, Mr. Mayor, it is my opinion that this is not a good motion. We have been down this path before. We've had over the years where you had the person going out marking the tires, and you get complaints from those downtown, and those get the tickets, and that person or person will eventually pull from the assignment, and that practice came to a stop. It is my opinion that if, in light of Ms. Spruill refreshing my recollection, that the employers, the business owners downtown need to do a better job. They need to do a thorough job. They need to go beyond the call of duty to police their own employees. And that's the information that we got. In light of that information, I think they need to go a step further. They're asking us to throw taxpayers' dollars at a problem that they can help correct themselves. This is not a proper way, in my opinion, to use taxpayers' funds. Now, I may be in the minority, but it's my job, and that's what I've done for almost 20 years now, is try to watch the taxpayers' money. Now, I think if they would do their job and make sure that these employees park in a designated parking space in one of our public parking spaces, then we would not potentially have this problem. Now, you know, it's been said before, I give great respect to all the people here at the table, but, you know, these parking places and parking lots are not going to be in immaculate condition, just like the streets are not. I mean, but I think that these parking places are going to be nice enough for them to park. I mean, behind the Starkville Cafe, I mean, that's a nice parking spaces based on my recollection, and also that across from the former Evans Shine Parlor. Now, that's what needs to happen. You know, we want, you know, when downtown, and I appreciate downtown. Thank you, Starkville. Thank you, downtown. But it seems to me, see, I say this every day, the whole term. It don't matter election year or no election. I'm not insinuating anything, but you know, I'm not in favor of accommodating downtown just because they're downtown. I don't think downtown should be given no special treatment. Mississippi State should not be given special treatment, but it appears to me that whenever they come to the board for something, we want to bend over backwards and spend the money in the bank. We got $30,000, and Mr. Clerk said we're not going to have much money left. Now, you know, the young lady, and bless her, you know, her heart, she come down here tonight and talk about directional science. Let's see how the directional science is going to work. Let's explore these opportunities. It's assured this person somebody's going to start complaining. Well, they wrote me a ticket. I got a ticket. You know, we need to enforce the laws downtown the same way we enforce them in Ward 1, in Ward 2, Ward 3, Ward 4, Ward 5, Ward 6, and Ward 7. That's what we need to do in downtown, just like the rest of us who have businesses throughout this city. You know, I mean, we just have to do our part as a family. We just can't spend these taxpayers' dollars just on downtown. You know, I mean, we're struggling as it is with our 20 mills. We're just gonna run out of the money. Now, the friendly amendment, of course, I can't support it, but that's even better. But at the same time, we need to, downtown, look, the chief told us that a big parking problem is that the employees of these businesses are taking up these places. And I just don't seem to understand, in Alderman Perkins' opinion, if you got people working for you, why they can't do as they're told. Most jobs, I understand, if you don't do what you're told, you go to the house. I mean, that's what happened in the city of Starkville. You know, we hire people in the city of Starkville, we expect you to do what we say. You know, if you don't, we got rules and regulations. And those rules and regulations would include disciplinary measures up to termination. You know, I'm not trying to run downtown, but that's what they need to start doing. Now, do we act this fast when other people come up here with issues? No. So I think the first thing we need to do is let downtown need to have a serious discussion with downtown. They need to tell their employees, look, we got a parking problem. And look, you know, you work for me, you know, it's a condition of your employment. We need you to get your vehicles off the streets. And let's see how that works. Just because somebody come down here and asks you got money in your pocket, I mean, you got to hand it out. That's what this is all about. Somebody got to take a stand for the people. And, you know, but that's what happened. Well, let's see how the directional sign is going to work. So with all those things said, Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna ask the board to defeat this measure, and after this, I got one more matter I'm gonna speak to tonight. But this is gonna be, I think, the next thing coming up on the agenda, and I'm gonna be done for the night. So, but I want the people downtown to know we appreciate them. But getting back to Chief Lindley's report, that one of the biggest problems downtown is the employees parking. So let's get the employees off the street. You know, and of course, I understand they can park there, but if the businesses are so concerned, they need to regulate their own house. They need to control their own house. You can't control your own house, then you want the city to do it. You want the city to do it. You want to spend. We're going to be broke in a few minutes. I guess we'll start going to end the fund balance.
Don't go there.
And then I won't be able to spend no $20,000 on no ditch in Ward 6. I won't be able to spend $15,000. Some things can get piecemeal during the course of these meetings. We get $20,000 on a ditch and ditch $11,000 and whatever it costs. But we need to defeat this and start taking care of the people's business in the right way. And we need to defeat this. We need to defeat this matter and get these people off the street. You know, they need to. Let's get them. Let's free these spaces up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Dimmons.
Just a few brief comments. I do want to say that this is not some rash decision. This is not something that's just been brought before the board tonight. This was something that Chief Lindley even hired or had an intern this summer looking at parking issues for throughout the summer and did studies with me and our interviews with me and others. And I think I haven't seen the results of that study, but I know the last time I talked to her, she realized even that during the peak hours of the day, there were issues. The talk about this being a tax issue, we can't forget, and I've tried to be a champion for downtown, but we can't forget that downtown is the nucleus of our tax base. We can't forget that when you look at 2% monies, when you look at other things, and when you look at the budget of the city, the fact that ad valorem tax is only 30-40%, the rest of it is sales tax driven, that when you start looking at the impact of businesses and you start looking at the impacts of restaurants, that those things are significant. But most importantly, I don't think it's the place of the city for us to dictate what people's employees can and can't do. We can't go in there and tell them to do something. We've tried to have those conversations from the private side of telling them that, you know, there's parking issues. Let's talk about this. There have been several meetings with all the people downtown about parking. So these aren't things that have been rushed to. And I think the role of government in this is the fact that we have laws on the books that have been long-standing laws on the books that have been enforced in various ways, with all due respect to everyone that made the decisions of, well, it's not the best time to enforce it, so let's slack up. And they did, rightfully so. And frankly, it's probably what helped make downtown what it is. But downtown is now more a destination than it ever has been before. And it's incredibly difficult for us from the role of government side to say that we, as a government, need to dictate private employee habits. And I don't think that's something we can do. So I think we have to be careful in the lines that we do there. So I do appreciate all the work.
Alderman Sistrunk.
And there are valid points made by both aldermen. I'm going to kind of loop us back to a question about funding. There obviously is a fee for a parking ticket. What is the fine for a parking ticket? $10. And for a handicap parking place?
$200.
$200. And is there an enforcement mechanism? If I get one of those tickets and decide not to pay it, what happens to me? You boot me? Okay, all right. But it would go through a collection process and to the extent possible. And we typically collect about what percentage, Mr. Rook?
On parking, everything.
Okay.
It's a state statute, you collect a percentage, but
Okay.
parking, the city is all.
Okay. Both aldermen raised good points, and I think the reason that I'm willing to try this, although Alderman Perkins is right, he's sat up here for 20 years, and I'm sure he's seen it enforced, not enforced, enforced, not enforced. The reason I'm willing to try is that there has been a resurgence downtown. It is time limited and cost limited. There is the potential that we will recover some of the costs through fees and revenues, and I that's what tips me toward supporting it. But I do want us to keep track and to evaluate again at the end of the period as we talked about.
Alderman Carver.
Two more comments. I get the opportunity through my 8 to 5 job to associate with a lot of the businesses down the downtown district, and they feel, the phone calls I've gotten over the last 2 weeks about this, that their problem is 80% or more is not patrons, but it's more their employees. And they've also, I know, talking to the managers and day in, day out with this and getting to hear their opinions daily, they feel like, they've got so many different employees, and that the employees would say, they'll tell them, no, you don't park there, but they really have no bite to, have nothing that can really tell them you can't take up the spots right in front of the place because that's a public parking spot. So the time-limited remedy is probably the only probable solution to this. And then secondly, I think, as my personal opinion, what you'll see is, I would like to see it, Jennifer's still here, possibly since y'all have connections, or maybe an easy email, just send it like maybe a letter out that tells all business owners this is coming, so you can start telling your employees, and so we won't affect that. But what I would say, I think my personal opinion is it won't be, what you'll see is maybe just a handful of employees get tickets, and then what you'll see is the parking can get alleviated pretty quick, the parking problems, because I think, my wife shops down there, I do sometimes, but you really, you can get everything done in an hour. That's a long time in that area to hit 15 or 20 stores. But what you'll probably see is this targeted mostly for the people. That's a unique situation. This is targeted uniquely to the people that are causing the problem. So I think once the word gets out, we're going to see a lot of free parking spots. But again, the business owners, they really feel like they have no authority. They really have no legal authority to tell their own, the people creating the problem. They have no legal authority to tell those people to move their car. And if they want to leave it there 8 or 10 hours, so be it. They can do it.
Aren't there also residences downtown, and then you possibly have some hotel parking that's occurring? So those would be other groups that need to be aware that this is coming.
I've got one more comment, then I'm gonna hush.
Alderman
I promise you. On the financial side, there's a great paper, and it's called The Cost of Free Parking. And when you look at parking as a revenue source, which I'm not encouraging this to be one, but the idea is, or the fact is that there will be some revenue generated here. And at some given time in the life of a city, when you're growing the way that we're growing and you're evolving the way that we're evolving into a fairly urban environment in parts, you have to have the real conversation about parking. We're about to go through that with the Cooley building and the fact that we are responsible as part of that project to have a parking deck. The campus has evolved through this over time with the issue of parking on campus, and I deal with that on a daily basis with the people who deal with that. And the revenues associated with that fund two different revenue or expenditure streams. So we can't look at this as just the fact that it's a privilege or whatever it may be, but there are real issues associated with parking. There are real opportunities there associated with parking as it relates to the turnover of businesses and getting people in and out of businesses and being able to help generate other types of opportunities associated with the growth of a true urban environment, which we're talking about here. Does that expand across the city? No, it doesn't. But I think there's long-term, we can't forget the fact that we are evolving into a community that has these issues that have to be confronted. Oxford is dealing with it and has just outsourced everything. So I think we're now to that point to where those conversations have to be had holistically. I yield the floor completely.
Alderman Carter.
Last question, is there enough appropriate signage, or is it already 2-hour parking limit signs down there? I mean, how do you wear?
You have 2-hour parking limit signs around town. Certainly, as enforcement becomes an issue, we might see the need to put additional signage up. I can't tell you whether the signage that we have now is adequate in an era where it's actually going to be enforced, but we'll find out.
Again, I'm going to support this because this is such a short-term, monetarily limited. You know, this is going to be good to come back in just a few months and see how this may not work.
It's almost an experiment, isn't it? Yeah.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Saying none. All those in favor of Alderman Corey's motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 5 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the discussion and consideration of placing a speed table on Greensboro Street. Alderman Carver, would you like to introduce?
Yes, sir. Through constituent request, probably a little late on my behalf. It's been several years since I've been in office that the Greensboro residents have been requesting this. And then I know the engineer and I were riding around the other day doing our assessment of the ward, and this came back up. I've had J. Yates is just the most recent example of somebody almost hit, or I've had a couple people almost run over children, and then other constituents. So the idea was brought again before the board tonight for a speed table. It's got the elongated, it's not a bump, but it's an elongated ramp that just enforces some kind of slowdown period. The location was determined by the city engineer to be the most central place on that long stretch of Greensboro Street. And then discussion has been had of whether to have 2 or 3. I think this is a great start if the board will approve it. Normally you don't hear complaints about roads being smooth and paved right, but then once Greensboro got repaved, it just increased the traffic speed there. It's a very, very nice road, and that's a very nice area, and I'd like to see it remain a safe area, so.
Discussion. Alderman Vaughn.
First, I think we ought to do like we done on West Side Drive. We ought to let Chief Leonard them observe it before we decide to put the tables down. We should do that first and let them study it like they did West Side Drive, because it's taken 2 years to get them down West Side Drive. But if we let them observe and let them study it, and then we'll go from there, instead of just going on making the motion to put the tables down. I think it'd be best for us to study it first.
Can I ask you a question while you say, have y'all seen, do you like that idea on West Side?
I got one, matter of fact, I got one of the neighbors here now. Ms. Kelly, how you think about them? What you think about the speed tables for that?
It's not helping too much.
There you go.
They are so far apart. When they come over that second one, they just speed up.
That's been the experience in my ward too, and I didn't mean to interrupt in any way, but one of the streets in my ward has 2 speed tables, one at each end, and people slow down to approach it, go over it, speed up to the next speed table, slow down, go over it. So it helps marginally, but it really doesn't solve the problem. And I think the bigger issue is traffic enforcement, and I think that comes back to our asking Chief Lindley deploy those motorcycle policemen over and put them in Jay Yates and Amelia Beale's yards. So,
Further discussion.
Well, there's some real, I said this with Green Oaks. When you deal with the streets in Starkville that were built in the era of let's build them as wide as we can, you have some incredibly difficult decisions to be made when you look at traffic calming. You look at Hiwassee, you look at Douglas MacArthur, you look at Greensboro, you look at all these others that are far too wide to be the neighborhood streets that they are. And they weren't designed with a neighborhood level type of eye. You have these challenges. Now, can we fix it? No, we can't. But I hope moving forward, and I think now we have those standards in place to where we don't build streets like that anymore. What do? Well, there's a lot of information out there about traffic calming. You can do what we did on University Drive and put in a bump out and put a stop sign in. It's worked, but that's more of an urban situation than what Greensboro is. Speed tables are another. You can put texture in the road. You can do a lot of things, but the issue remains, you've got to do something. I mean, the street is too wide, it's too straight, it's too smooth. Just like, because of friendships on Green Oaks, I was bombarded with stuff about people upset about traffic on Greensboro. And I'm completely sympathetic. People, I'm fortunate enough to live in a neighborhood that, my street's like 18 feet wide. My kids play in it all the time, and I love it. Wouldn't change it for the world. People still speed on it, but not as much as they do on Green Oaks. So I don't know what the answer is here, but we have to do something because it is incredibly unsafe. There are more kids now on Greensboro Street. There are more young families. There's more things happening there. But honestly, we need to have some type of precedent that goes beyond what happened on Hiwassee, because Hiwassee is a great example of where those speed tables were put. I don't think those continue to be the answer, but we need to do something and find a mitigation standard for these huge roads that make it work, that make them more narrow, that make them more pedestrian, that make them slower, because all these things are built in neighborhoods where you don't need to go 45 miles an hour. So I don't know what we need to do. We need to look at it, I think, collectively and put a standard in place now so that as these issues begin to come forward more and more and more, that we have a precedent set that we have a more sound solution than just let's go put a speed table in.
And some of those streets, and Greensboro is one of them, and I'm not unsympathetic to the speeding. I have it in my neighborhood, and I don't have nearly the traffic that happens on Greensboro. But Greensboro is no longer just a neighborhood street. It is very much an arterial street these days. I think something we can do immediately is ask the police chief to redirect some of those resources as far as, okay.
Not only written motorcycle tickets down there extensively over the last few months, we've also had the radar trailer there.
Okay.
So this is not a new problem, and it's something that we have tried to address, but it simply is no better than as long as we're there, the presence is there.
I will say that having the motorcycle officers in my neighborhood, and I've seen them there a couple of times, has changed behavior in my neighborhood a little bit. Now, the longer it goes between times that they're seen, the more people lapse back into their bad habits, their evil ways. But while they're there, they do help.
And I would remind the board, with all due respect, we wrote over 10,000 traffic tickets in Starkville, Mississippi last year. I think Tony Rook and Ford Administrator can attest to that fact, that we've only got a population of 24,000, so I'm not sure that not writing enough tickets is in the proper venue, but we certainly will do whatever the board directs. We serve the pleasure of the board.
Alderman Carver.
So, Chief Lindsey, are you, in your professional opinion, are you saying through this collective data that you think that, and you live on Greensboro, do you think that speeding is a problem in that area? Or do you think it's
On the
east
west
end?
end, it
Yeah.
certainly is a problem.
So, I guess I'm coming as a fellow elected official and colleague, and just tell me what I need to do. We've had the police chief say that, in his opinion, through radar and ticketing, that It is a problem. So anything, just tell me what I need to do. If y'all want to do another police survey, or if we can just go on and take action on it, I'd be in support of it.
Can I ask a question?
Alderman Dennis.
Chief Lindley, y'all just included on Whitfield Street the bike lanes, or we did as an engineer, from a striping standpoint. You made the travel lanes more narrow. Have you noticed that making an impact on speeding on Whitfield? I lived on that street when I was in graduate school, and it was another racetrack, so I know it was there, and that was pre-bike lanes.
It has restricted the range. The width of the lanes is in fact a successful traffic calming technique.
Edward, are there side stripes on Greensboro?
They're not. Is it wide enough?
We haven't looked at that. Of course, as you know, the lower end over the hill doesn't have any curb and gutter. So it's a little different roadway section from the east end to the west end.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Mr. Mayor, as the chief of police has indicated, that's a speeding problem all over town. We have a speeding problem on Hospital Road, but certainly I'm not advocating speed tables. And of course, the engineer, with the redesign of that road, I think about 12 feet travel lanes and about 8 feet on each side to help curb the problem. I think what we need to do tonight, just table this matter and let this matter come up for any needed discussion in the future as part of any capital improvement plan that the city engineer may deem necessary and proper. The matter before us tonight does not comply with the city policy. In my reading of it, the policy states that number one is that we have to have at least 80% of support from the residents in the affected area. And that has not happened. So with that being said, I think any matter regarding any speeding issue should come up as part of the overall comprehensive plan so the board can consider all those matters collectively. We here just recently have moved in a direction of considering a capital improvement project or project individually. I think we can get a better picture of how we should proceed as a governing body. We look at it overall, which would also help us to gauge the revenue aspect of it. And of course, we all have speeding issues in our city. Greensboro, just based on my lay person's opinion, and not an expert in the area, is no wider than Hospital Road and some other areas in the city. So I think that this is a matter that we've heard plenty of comments from tonight, and I think it's a matter that needs to be studied, and we can get a report back from the engineer whenever it is deemed necessary and proper as part of his capital improvement project. So I don't think we need to move forward with the tables. And even if it was an important project, there are other capital improvement projects in this city that have been on the capital improvement list for a long time, and they have a greater precedent over there. And in light of what Alderman Vaughn said, I remember the matter from West Side Drive came through the capital improvement program, and I think there was some discussion by the board about it coming up sooner, but it went through that process, and the constituents requested that, and the board approved it as part of the capital improvement program. And certainly, I'm mindful of the concerns that the gentleman from one is trying to satisfy. So I think that this needs to come through the capital improvement program as to how we should handle this and other speeding issues in the city. And so with that being said, Mr. Mayor, I move that we table this matter, and we will wait a decision, a recommendation from the engineer how we should proceed with this and other similar type matters in the future. So I move that this matter be tabled.
Alderman Perkins has moved to table the matter at hand. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. All those abstaining, please signify by raising your hand. Let's try that one more time. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All right, that's easy. Measure passes. Okay, the next two matters I think also have a potential to be lengthy discussions. I need a moment of privilege, so without objection, I'll move us into a brief recess.
We've just
Any
got that
objection?
one, yes.
You've got two matters. You've got the discussion on the application process, and you've got the discussion on the resolution for Citizens for Community Economic Development. And I need to go to the restroom. Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, brief recess. Dallas. Meeting will now come back to order. The next matter you have before you for discussion tonight is the discussion and consideration of the process for interviews of the applicants for the Community Development Director position. Discussion. Alderman Dumas.
Mr. Boyd or Ms. Sproul, do y'all want to give us an update on how many we have that have been selected to this point? I think it's 7.
6 or 7, I think Boyd was the last 10.
I think I didn't bring my. Well, that's okay.
I think it's 6.
Okay. What you have on the table tonight is something that takes in mind the numbers of people that we had apply. It takes in mind their geographic location. One of the issues that with the way we broadcast this thing, we have candidates from all over the Southeast. We have one from the Midwest. And we have some very qualified candidates. Some of them are quite impressive. And so what I'd like to do is to keep in mind the time of the board and the precedent that we have in interviewing in open session. I'd like to put together a small group of individuals, not only from the board, but from groups in the community who are interested in development processes and the development community, to have a first order interview process with these candidates that we have shortlisted. So you remember at the last board meeting, we had a packet with the 25 or 30 or whatever it may have been that applied. Randy and Lynn asked that we submit our names who we'd like to interview, and that's the 6 or 7 that we now have. I'd like to take this group that's listed, and I'd like for this group to then have phone interviews with each one of these to gauge their interest, see if they're really interested, let them know the realities of the position, those kind of things, so that we get a better understanding of how they really fit within the system. And then we can bring a shorter list of individuals to the board to interview in open session as a board of a whole on the timelines that's there. Now, one thing I failed to do in this, and I had the intention to do this, Alderman Parker obviously is someone that the development community is very connected with, and I failed to include him on this list, and I would like to add him to the list that's shown on the back of your packet. So just to briefly go over this, the first step would be Board of Alderman selection of initial candidate pool. That's today. And so that's where we're at today with the names that have been listed, the 6 that have been listed. I'd like for us to then approve or consider the list that's shown on number 2 with the addition of Alderman Parker. That would be myself, the mayor, Alderman Perkins, Chief Administrative Officer Sproul, the President of Responsible Development Starkville, the Chairman of the Greater Starkville Development Partnership, and the Chairman of the Starkville Planning and Zoning Commission. And for that group then, for the next 2 weeks, conduct phone interviews with each one of these to make sure, as I mentioned, to discuss the process, see where they are, gauge their real intention and their real purpose.
I don't think we can do that and not run afoul of the Public Meetings Act.
Because of the number of aldermen?
No, because it will be an advisory committee, an official advisory committee of the city.
You could do it as an open meeting.
Yes, but I mean, how's that gonna work from a teleconference standpoint? Invite everybody in and just say gather around the phone? As long as you do that, I think you'll be okay.
Well, now, you tell me that's something I'm unaware of. I've actually been hired through this process. I thought it was a good process, and I was trying to get it to a way where we didn't have 7 candidates sitting in here for 30 minutes during an open board meeting.
Yeah, my only criteria to make sure we don't violate the Open Meetings Act is it needs to be a public meeting, a special call public meeting. with proper notice and invitation to attend and listen in by anybody in the public or press that wants to attend.
So if we did that, say we set aside 4 hours, 5 hours, as long as we notice and do the proper steps, we're good.
And you would have a group teleconference, is that
Correct.
your plan?
Correct.
And everybody would be around one phone here, and you would call the various applicants?
Right.
I think that would check out. I don't think it's the best way to go, but I think if you're gonna do a teleconference, that would comport with the law.
Mr. Mayor.
Hold on, Alderman Demus, are you finished?
Well, I mean, so your best way would be we get these folks in here and interview them one-on-one?
Yeah, that's a public meeting.
So beside the precedent that we've set by doing that, is that typical standard procedure by municipalities in the state of Mississippi?
Where I'm going with this is the Vicksburg Planning Commission case, which says, and the Ethics Commission has just recently ruled, that any advisory committee that makes recommendations to the board is a critical step in the decision-making process, and that triggers the need for a public meeting.
I yield, Alderman Perkins.
Alderman Perkins.
The city attorney I don't need to say anything further. He's addressed everything. Basically, what I was gonna say, I was gonna make sure he advised the board in the fact that the board has been down this path just recently, so he gave some good legal advice on the issue. That's all I just want to make those comments.
Further discussion.
What are the thoughts?
This process needs to get moving.
It does.
My recommendation would be select a group of finalists and invite them in and interview them before the board as a whole, as we've done with previous department head vacancies.
I'm not speaking against it. I just say it just needs to be legally, and the
Right.
the city attorney is doing a great job in explaining that. I'm not trying to hold the process up.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that process, it just needs to be done as an open meeting. Yeah.
So now,
So we've got,
well, just real clearly, Chris, if there was not an elected official as part of this group, let's say we wanted a way, frankly, to encourage our planning and zoning commissioner or others to have a chance to talk to these individuals that would be outside of the open meeting. If there was not an elected official on that committee that phone interviewed these individuals or had the chance to talk to them, would that need to go through the Open Meetings Act?
If it's in a recommending or advisory committee to the city of Starkville, it applies. The Open Meetings Act applies.
I want to hear others' opinions.
Alderman Sistrum.
And all I really want to add to this is that it is a very good group of applicants that we have. They are from all over the country, and I would like for there to be some way to ensure that there's real interest. Now, one thing that will ensure that there's some real interest is that they'll have to pay their own way here to interview. But as we make these requests for interviews, I certainly hope we have vetted these candidates to ensure that their interest is real and that we're not wasting their time and money as well as our time and asking them to come here for an interview.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Ms. Brewer, what's the salary? I know I've asked you, I don't remember, I'm not just setting you up here, but what's the salary range for this position?
It was approximately 80,000.
I'm ready to vote now. You know.
All right, the full range, Mr. Boyd says, is from 70 to 93, but I know 80 was approximately what Mr. Griffith was making one year.
Mr. Mayor, look, let me say this right now. I mean, y'all go ahead and get a process, comply to open meetings law, because I'm already voting no. This money's too hefty, but you need the process. Follow your lawyer now. I mean, we need to, what he's telling you is right, the open meetings law, and so the board can make a decision and do the right thing. But we need to follow the law on open meetings law.
You say 70 to 93, Ms. Brewer?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Griffin was making right at 80, wasn't he?
Approximately 80, yes, sir.
I know that Mr. Boyd has talked to most of these. Every time I've had a question, he's been able to answer it as part of him communicating with them. Chris, would that even be, and I know I'm splitting hairs here, but I would like to, before we waste our time and their time and getting them down here, getting them in here, if Randy was in the role of making sure their interest was there to the level that we would like, and he may have already done that. And if he served in an advisory role in the way that you say, would he run afoul of the issue at that point?
It sounds like in his role as the personnel officer, he's already reviewed the resumes, and as
Yeah.
you say, he's talked to the applicants to gauge their interest. So I think he's in the position to recommend a pool of candidates for the city to interview, and I don't think that would run afoul of the Open Meetings Act.
Randy, have you talked to every one of them that we've suggested?
I've not had telephone conversations with everyone. I've done some emails. I'll be glad to follow up with a telephone conversation and cover all the points applicable and
Okay.
make a final recommendation.
How long do you need for that, and how long do they need to prepare to get down here? We need 2 weeks or a month?
I would be able to have, working from the recommended list that we already have of 6 or 7 candidates there. By first of next week, I could complete telephone interviews with them, advise the board, and I would say give it probably 2 weeks to schedule, because some of those candidates, I think all of those were, you know, that we were looking at were in the southeast regional area. And I think if we, you know, gave them 2 weeks notice to set their schedule and get here would be adequate.
Okay, so if we had a report of the next, or, so the next, so the meeting,
February 5th.
that would be February 5th. No, you're saying then, by the end of next week, you would have conducted your phone interviews. We need to give them 2 weeks' notice of needing to be down here, so that would put us then between the 5th and the 19th meeting. So we could do interviews on the 19th?
I think I would be in a position by Monday, Tuesday at the latest, this coming Monday or Tuesday, to be able to tell you, you know, a final list, you know, of candidates from this 6 or 7, a final list of folks that would be interested, that seem genuinely sincere about their interest in our position.
Okay. Well, is it too ambitious to think that they could be here on the night of the 5th to interview?
I think that would be doable, given the fact that, you know, we've got 3 weeks to be able to set that up.
All right.
I think we could.
Well, I move that we instruct the personnel officer to do just as he's done.
You want to have a board meeting and interview, 6 or 7 interviews?
It's just time. I mean, that's a good point. Do you want to do it the week between?
I'd just prefer it was
So the week after the 5th?
Any time other than that same night as the board meeting.
Okay, I have no problem with that.
12th.
So that would be the 12th?
The next Tuesday's the 12th.
Or
No, that's P and Z though, so we'll have to do it upstairs or somewhere else.
Or out at the sports
Sports
place?
place.
or you could do it the 29th. No, we're at M&L.
We don't have a 29th.
Yeah, it'd be a special call on the 29th, but we're at MML.
I say we give them the 12th. I know we need to be expedient with this, and I know Ms. Spruill is wanting it tomorrow, but,
She wanted it yesterday.
okay. Well, then we do it at, what about the
14th.
Wednesday, or, I'm fine, y'all let me know, we're just getting to the detail of the date here.
14th.
7th?
No, we're not doing the 14th.
I've been married too long.
What nights are out for people?
14th.
We'll do it like the rest of it. Hold on, we're just gonna be off here.
Ms. Spruill,
What about February 6th? Wednesday, February 6th?
Do it February
Prayer
14th.
meeting.
Well, the second.
Or during business hours.
my wife stays mad at me enough. I better
Valentine's
stay at
Day. Do it on Valentine's Day.
home. No. Then we'll really see who's serious.
Any conflicts on Wednesday, February 6th?
No.
February what now?
6th. All right, well, I move that we instruct the personnel officer
Well, I won't be here. I'll be at a conference. That's okay. Y'all go ahead and do it.
What about
Sure.
Thursday night?
When do you get
Seven.
back?
I leave Tuesday, I'll get back Saturday. So that's okay. Just, if I need to, I'll teleconference in. I'll work that. You think we could work that out?
I'm sure we could.
Okay. Problem solved.
All right, so February 6th?
Wednesday, February 6th. You got a motion?
Meeting.
Yes, to interview the list of candidates after the personnel officer has discussed the issues with the position with each one of them on February 6th.
And you want to go ahead and set the special call?
Yes.
All right. Alderman Dumas has made a motion to direct the personnel officer to identify candidates to be interviewed on February 6th and to set a special call board meeting for Wednesday, February 6th at 5:30 p.m. in the City Hall courtroom. Alderman Dumas, or at a location to be determined in case something happens with the courtroom. Alderman Dumas, that's your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Dumas, you wish to speak on the merits.
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Alderman Vaughn.
What about that Thursday? Why we won't do Wednesday?
The 7th?
That way, anybody wants to go to church on Wednesday.
Partnership banquet.
Partnership, not good.
Friday?
No.
Oh,
No. All right, we're in discussion on the 6th. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of directing staff to draft a resolution supporting the Citizens for Economic Development Act. Alderman Sistrunk.
I'm going to tell you why I think it's timely for us to consider this tonight, why it's important, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about what this is. But we have the MML meeting coming up the 29th, as we've discussed, where some of us will be down in Jackson, and some of us will be meeting with MML officials and possibly legislative members during those meetings. And the Citizens for Economic Development Act is one of the things that's being considered in committee right now. So, as we're going down, it would probably be helpful to have some idea of whether this is something that the city of Starkville will support or not. It would certainly be beneficial for, I think, those sitting here at the table to know that. And then I think, too, that it would be useful to MML to know whether or not the city of Starkville is going to be supportive of this, as they are lobbying to get this passed. The Citizens for Economic Development Act is just another tool in the economic development toolbox, and thank you, Joe Max Higgins, for letting me borrow that quote. But it is an act that would allow a special purpose tax implemented and levied at the city level for specific local or area projects like improving streets and roads or refurbishing a downtown area, a drainage and sewage project, something along those lines. It would allow up to a 1% sales tax increase on the things that the state taxes at 7%. It is at the state legislative level right now. They are considering whether or not to approve it. If it were approved, it again becomes a tool that the cities around the state can use as a funding mechanism for capital projects. It's important to know when you're deciding whether you think this is something that you think the city of Starkville should support or not, that if it were to be implemented at the local level, it would require a 60% referendum by voters. So it can't be implemented without a vote by the voters of the municipality, which I think is something that's politically sensitive at the state level as well as obviously at the community level. The revenue would stay in the community. There's up to 1% that could be levied. It is levied for a specific project, and once that project is paid for, the levy is removed. So it is not a permanent tax. gives citizens a vote, it gives municipalities a tool. It impacts not just Starkville, but every municipality in the state. And I think whether the city of Starkville would ever use it or not as a funding mechanism, and I know in Mr. Carver's comments in the paper about running again, that there are issues coming up, he feels like that might require bonding by the city. This would just be another mechanism that could be used for funding those kind of projects. What's attractive about this from a financial perspective is that it would pay off a lot faster than a general obligation bond. And let's say we were talking about a street project. We've financed our street projects over 10 years, but it's not uncommon for a community to do that over 20 years. By the time our bonds have paid off, which were 10-year bonds, a lot of those streets are going to need work again by the time those bonds are paid off. For a 20-year bond, certainly, those streets are going to need work by the time those bonds are paid off. This kind of taxation would pay off a lot faster than a 10 or 20-year bonding process. So it makes sense from a financial perspective. I think it would be beneficial to have as an option. It is not a mandate. I'm in no way suggesting that we have a project. We can't do it until the state legislature acts on it. But I do think it does give municipalities across the state an option, and I'd like to see the city of Starkville be supportive of this at the state legislative level. And so I'm asking that we have the staff draft a resolution, vote on it on February 5th, but as a process of going through that ask tonight, we also get a sense of whether the board does in fact support this sort of thing, so that as people are down in Jackson, they'll know, no, the city of Starkville doesn't support it, or yes, the city of Starkville does potentially support it. And so I'm going to move authorization to direct staff to draft a resolution of support for the Citizens for Economic Development Act to be voted on by the board on February 5th.
Alderman Sistrunk has made a motion to direct staff to draft a resolution of support for the Citizens for Economic Development Act to be presented at the February 5th board meeting. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Sistrunk, you wish to speak on the merit?
No, and again, please keep in mind, we're not proposing a tax. We can't propose a tax. But we're offering I'm hoping that we offer our support so that we do have that option as we look at funding issues going forward. That's to be determined by the state legislature. Once they have voted, and certainly none of this would happen while this board is seated. Once that's been determined, if it does become an option, it would go to the voters to be decided whether the tax was to be implemented or not. So keep that in mind, that the voters will have the local voters will ultimately be the ones who make the decision if and when we ever get through the state legislature and down to the municipal level.
Further discussion? Alderman Carver?
I'm just making sure and paraphrasing, this is saying nothing more than we would be add our names to a list of cities
Yes.
that would possibly
Yes.
support a referendum if the state legislature were to approve this.
Yes.
Nothing more.
Nothing more. There's no project, there's no tax.
Okay.
It's strictly an endorsement of a position.
Okay.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Nay. By a vote of five in favor and 2 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is a request for approval of the City of Starkville claims docket for all departments except for the fire department. Discussion.
Move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Corey to approve of the City of Starkville claims docket for all departments except for the fire department as of January 10th, 2013, as presented. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Dumas. Alderman Corey, do you speak on the merits?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Nay. By a vote of 5 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. And that's going to conclude the open session portion of our agenda. We do have matters for your potential discussion in executive session. A motion to go into closed session would be in order.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Dumas. But prior to hearing Alderman Dumas's motion, Alderman Sistrunk.
I just wanted to let the press know, for anybody who's interested in some additional information about that act, I'll be happy to give you Quincy McCoro's phone number and let you talk with him. He's at MML, and he's working with the legislature on this particular act. You absolutely can.
Alderman Dumas.
No, I moved approval.
You move
To go into
to
closed
go
session.
into closed session. Alderman Dumas has made a motion to go into closed session to determine whether there is a need for an executive session. Alderman Dumas, that's your motion.
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. At this time, I'll ask that we clear the room to go into closed session to determine whether there is a need for executive session.